I'm Seth.
And I'm Ngoc.
And this is Shem. And we had Shem 18 months ago, 30th of July 2016. And we live here in New York City from Los Angeles, California originally. And knew that when we found out we were pregnant, pretty quickly after that we wanted to have a natural birth as much as possible. Synchronistically, soon after, found out about the farm in Tennessee, and eventually made arrangements to have a birth down at the farm. We had a baby moon there and visited with the midwives and picked out a place that we would stay and have the birth. Rented a car so that a few weeks before the due date, which was September 11th was the estimated due date, we would drive down to Tennessee and have a baby, just as planned. And of course, that's not how it went. And it was July 27th. I was at a work lunch. I had just ordered my food and I was very hungry and excited about eating, and my phone rang. And it was Ngoc, and she said, "You have to come to the hospital right now because I'm having a baby." And it took me a moment to process. I remember putting the phone down and kind of trying to take it in, and my coworker said to me, "Who is that?" And I said, "This is Ngoc. She's having a baby." "What are you still doing here?" So I jumped up and ran to the hospital, or got a cab and went to the hospital, which was in Bushwick, although we lived in Harlem at the time. It was very far away because Ngoc was only 34 weeks. Actually, not even quite 34 weeks. And it was told to us that was one hospital that they would potentially have a natural birth at 34 weeks.
With midwives.
With midwives. It was a complicated process, kind of from the beginning, walking in the hospital. They wouldn't really let me see her because of HIPAA rules and confidentiality. They only had curtains in between the patients, so I had to basically wait out in the hallway. She was texting me to bring her food, and the nurses were telling me I couldn't bring in any food, so from the get-go I was sneaking in food. And then, although her water was broke, she wasn't having any contractions, and we wound up for a couple days basically in an observation closet, waiting for something to happen, being told that Ngoc wasn't allowed to eat anything. I was sleeping in a chair, and it was pretty uncomfortable. But on the morning of the third day, which was Saturday morning, about 4 o'clock in the morning, you started having contractions.
Mm-hmm.
You want to tell me?
So the whole experience was kind of funny because we were like trying to fight the hospital. We had like very negative viewpoints about hospital experience, and from the get-go, the doctors came in and said, "We're going to have to induce you tomorrow. We have to, do X, Y, Z," and I would say why and no, and maybe another day. I kept on trying to delay them because I was so frightened that I would get a C-section. I didn't want any interventions, and I didn't want any medications, but I also knew that he was coming early, so there were potentially issues that he was going to have to experience. So it was like weighing everything and kind of trying to feel things out. And meanwhile, my husband, Seth, is saying, "Well, don't worry, we might just break out of here and then we can just go to the farm and get in a car." And I was like, "With my water broken, like, how's that going to work?" So I'm like, I felt like I was trying to negotiate between my son who wanted to come and my husband who wanted him to wait. So Friday night, I got this really big sensation from what I felt was my son saying that he was coming. And he was asking me if that was okay. And I said, "Okay, you can come." And I literally felt like he was reaching for the door and opening it. And then that morning at 4 a.m., I woke up and I felt like the contractions happening. And they were really, really subtle and not too intense, but I started texting my doula and all my midwife friends and telling them that I was having contractions. Seth was still asleep, and I think a couple hours had gone by. I had downloaded a contraction app tracker because that's how I do things. And so my contractions, my doula was asking how far are they, and they were like really inconsistent, 10 minutes, 12 minutes. So she figured that it probably wasn't like a day where I was gonna have a baby. Then in the afternoon, like around 11 o'clock, my contractions started to get painful. And I felt like every time I was having one, I was like resisting it. And it was just like so painful. And Seth, the doctor had come in and I was like, I think I'm having contractions. She plugged me up. She's like, no, you're not. And she left.
I said, great, you're not having contractions.
Because he wanted to go to Tennessee. And so then he was talking to someone on the phone, like his dad or something. He's like, yeah, no, she's fine. She's just having cramps. And I was like, no, I'm having contractions. So basically, no one believed what was happening to me. And so I'm like experiencing these contractions that were very painful. And luckily, one of my girlfriends happened to be in town, so she was in the hospital with us. And she's just like a very, she like senses things very well. So she just asked a question. She said, how are you feeling? I said, I feel like I'm resisting the contractions and it's really painful. And she said, well, what do you think might help? And I said, I think I need to meditate on opening and accepting that he's coming and to ride the wave and to expand. So she said, so try that. So from that point on, every time I had a contraction, I would close my eyes and say, open, expand, ride. And so the pain dissipated, and now it's just kind of opening. And so from 11 to 12, my contractions went from being very sporadic, 18 minutes, 12 minutes, 10 minutes, to being like a countdown. It was like 7, 6, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes. And so our doula called again, and I said, you need to tell her to come right now. The baby's coming right now. And so Seth's like, very kind. He's, hi, how's it going? Yeah, like all this nice talk. I was like, tell her to come right now. Yeah, I think she thinks the baby's coming right now. What did she? I don't remember what
she wanted to know if she should stop and bring coconut water.
Right,
I
right.
said, probably not.
I was like, tell her to get the fuck over here. So the doctor comes, and she's like, what's wrong? I was like, I'm having a baby. And she's like, oh. So she goes, gets the thing, plugs me up. Oh, you're having contractions. Oh, we gotta go to the labor delivery room. So we go, we rush. And all the while they're trying to plug me up and, put their IV in me, and I'm saying no. I told my friend to bring earplugs and an eye mask, so I put those in the eye mask so that I could block everything out. So the nurses and doctors were very frustrated with us because I wouldn't listen to them. I wouldn't pay attention to them. They said, we can't do this unless she gets plugged in. And I think by the time that I was ready to push, the midwife came in and said to Seth and the doula that she needed me to tell them that I was having a baby. And my doula was saying very kindly, I think it's crowning, like trying to be gentle about it, but it was like such an odd. And so I finally just said as kindly as I could, I'm having my child, like leave me alone. So he came, the active labor lasted an hour. I pushed 4 times. He came out screaming, healthy. They put him on me. It was really beautiful. But we immediately had issues because, kombu, huh?
He wants to nurse.
Con chờ chút xíu đây nha.
So we had to go to the NICU, but he was pretty healthy.
He was healthy. He just couldn't breastfeed.
So we started alternating 2-hour shifts so that Ngoc could try and get him to breastfeed and try to hand express and nurse him, which is.
So I basically like went to and from work like 3 or 4 times a day to nurse him because I couldn't pump because I had hand express from the beginning. And I also just didn't like the idea of pumping and going to work and pumping while my child was at home. It's very extreme, but that's, and it was important to me because he had come early and I didn't want, okay, Bootsy, okay. We lived like 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes from my work. And then I got another job, which ended up being 20 minutes walk from work. So I started riding a bike back and forth to breastfeed him. And so that's what I've been doing secretly. I guess now it's going to be public knowledge. Which I don't do very much anymore. It's only occasionally.
And just yesterday we found out there's another one on the way. 13 weeks, yeah. Which we were both very surprised that she could get to 13 weeks and we didn't even realize, but I think we've been so focused on baby number 1.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Đây con bú nha. Để cho con bú nha.